Hello and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Erin and I love sharing tips, tricks, and all the mistakes we made on our trip so you don't have to make the same mistakes on yours. Today we're talking about Rhodes, but this is not going to be a typical video in which I share how do you get there, what do you do, what should you see. These are really notes I wrote for myself of tips and tricks that I thought would have been really helpful to know before our first trip to Rhodes. And I didn't see these mentioned really anywhere else during the research process. So without further ado, let's rapid fire through the 15 things I think you should know before your first trip to Rhodes. Tip number 1, how much time do you need on this island? Now, I think personally the sweet spot is 5 days, and I would do 3 days in Old Town and 2 days in Lindos. Now, you want an extra day in Old Town because you're able to do a lot of day trips from there. So let's just say you're done with seeing the entire island. You do kind of have that buffer day to kind of go out and see another smaller island that is not as traveled, that's a little bit more authentic if you wanted to. Now, I also recommend you doing 2 days in Lindos because we really kind of regretted this because we stayed our entire time in Old Town and we found ourselves kind of regretting that decision because there was a couple of restaurants we really wanted to try in Lindos, but we weren't able to do that because we didn't want to drive in the evenings. So in order to kind of enjoy the best of both worlds, I recommend doing 3 days in Old Town and 2 days in Lindos. Now, this leads us to tip number 2, which is if you do decide to stay in Lindos or even decide to split up your trip and do half your time in Lindos, do be aware that the accommodations here can be a little bit more expensive. For the most part, I want to say this is the most expensive spot on the entire island. Now, when it comes to vibes, you do definitely get a lot more of those like traditional Greek island vibes, if that makes any sense. Like this is going to be that beautiful whitewashed town. It's almost very similar to the Kyklades, if you will, but it's not. So you will be paying a premium if you're staying in Lindos. Tip number 3 is St. Paul's Beach. Now, when you first park your car, you're gonna head downhill and the first little bit of beach area you're gonna see is gonna be all the organized beds. Now, these beds cost an arm and a leg. At least I thought they were pretty expensive. For a bed on the first line or right next to the water and the sand, it was like 80 euros for the entire day, which I thought was kind of expensive. But if you decide to do something up on lines 2 and further up, you're gonna be paying about 50 euros for 2 beds and umbrella for the entire day, which is a little bit more reasonable. Now, if you don't want to be paying at all, and let's just say you're really just going to be here for like an hour or two and you just kind of want to see what the hype is about, I would actually recommend you walk over to the other side of St. Paul's Beach and go to that area where the like little cute cafe and restaurant is, because on that side, there's actually like a little nook for public beach access. So you can kind of just like platen your own towel down. You can kind of enjoy the sun for a couple of hours, a couple of minutes maybe even, and it's completely free. And the good thing about the other side, the free side, is actually it's a lot calmer. There's less wind and there's less of that like ripple from the wind in the waters. So we actually found the other side, which is the free side, to be a little bit more enjoyable. Tip number 4, the ferry situation. Now, hopefully I don't get confused saying this because it is confusing because there's 3 different ports and you don't really get that unless you're in Athens. Besides Athens port that I found really confusing, I think Rhodes is like pretty much up there on number 2 for me, because in one ferry area you get 3 different ports, and the 3 different ports are pretty much for the different vessel size. And so you have a port for the smaller vessels, you have a port for the medium vessels, and you have a port for the larger vessels. Now, your bigger vessel ports are going to be something like a Celebrity Cruises or something like Princess Cruises, NCL. Those are going to be the huge cruise ships that dock either during the day or for a couple days. Then you have more of those like regional type of ferries that goes to other Greek islands, and these are going to be the smallest ferries. So these are going to be like your day trip options, going to like an Halki, a Simi. Then you have your mid-size ferries. So think of maybe like a Sea Jets or even a Blue Star. And these are going to other Greek islands as well, but they're definitely going to be those bigger Greek islands instead of those like smaller day trip Greek islands. Now, the thing that you have to note with this is there is a possibility that in the morning when you go onto your ferry, that it's a complete different port that you get dropped off in the afternoon. Now, the thing with these these ports is there is a possibility that in the morning you leave from one port and then in the afternoon you come back to a whole different port. Now this is only a problem because these ports are not the closest to each other. So you could possibly spend between 20 to 30 minutes walking from where your car was parked in the morning to where you got dropped off in the afternoon after your day trip. Tip number 5, the people in Old Town can be a tad pushy. Now this was definitely a new experience for us in terms of Greek island hopping because typically the Greeks are really chill. They're not really up in your business, but we found ourselves when we were roaming around Old Town that especially some of the restaurants in the center, they were really eager to get you to check out their restaurant. They would talk to you. They would try to engage in some type of conversation and try to lure you into their restaurant. This is something we really didn't experience in any of the Greek islands. So just be aware that if you are in Rhodes Old Town, that may happen to you as well. Number 6, have good footwear. Now I'm definitely a repeat offender of this because I never pack the appropriate footwear when it comes to Greek islands. I always pack those really thin Greek sandals, like the leather strappy sandals, and they don't have much traction when it comes to walking in Old Town. So a lot of the times what you'll see is like really slippery cobblestone, and for some reason the Old Town cobblestone was insanely slippery. Now this also gets worse when there's a little bit of rain. If you are coming during shoulder season, especially in May, have proper footwear because the rain and slippery cobblestones really do not make for a very pleasant experience. Tip number 7, driving in roads. Now for the most part, we didn't have any major issues when it comes to driving in roads. Like everything is pretty straightforward. There are certain areas like the Old Town area and Lindos where there's a lot more traffic and people can get a little bit aggressive and a little slightly crazy. But for the most part, we didn't have any issues when it came to driving. Now we did get into a slight mini fender bender in which someone kind of like backed into our rear and they didn't speak an ounce of English and they were super chill about it. So even if you do kind of get into a minor incident, do not stress, don't freak out. These guys are super chill. But for the most part, we didn't have an issue with driving, at least not in daylight. Now, one thing you do have to be aware of is driving in the evening, especially once it gets dark. Now, roads don't have the best lighting when it comes to evening driving. They only have those like reflector things, and sometimes those don't really work for me because I get pretty bad halos when I drive in the evening, so those really don't work for me. So we really just try to avoid driving the evenings altogether if we were able to. Now, tip number 8 is car rentals. So by now you probably know that we're not the biggest fans of overspending at like a Hertz, Avis, or a Six unless it's necessary, because for the most part we found that local car companies in Greece are actually very reliable and a lot more affordable. So one company that I really recommend if you're looking for something a little bit more local and affordable is Rhodes Car Rental. Now these guys were spectacular because there was no type of any like insurance upsell, there was no type of like anything along those lines, and they were really straightforward to rent from. Now tip number 9, parking is a lot easier than what most people say it is. Now for the most part, you're not going to have any issues with parking because you can just like parallel park, or there's like a designated kind of like a dirt lot that you can park your car. The only area that we did have slight issues with is that ferry port area right next to Rhodes Old Town. Now this area, there isn't the most abundant parking, which is why it's very difficult to kind of find parking. And typically when people park there, it's for an entire day. So if you are doing a day trip and your ferry is departing from the port that is closest to Old Town, definitely spend a little bit more time or budget for a little bit more time in the morning to find parking. Tip number 10, shopping. Now, when it comes to souvenirs, I love me a good Greek souvenir. Like we have so many like olive wood bowls, we have olive oils, we buy literally everything whenever we're in Greece. And I want to say there's only like 2 Greek islands that I truly love for shopping, and one of those is Corfu. Actually, there's 3. One of those is Corfu, the other one's Crete, and now the third one is Rhodes. Rhodes Old Town shopping is fantastic. Like you will see pretty much every Greek item under the sun here, and this is where I also recommend you do most of the shopping, because comparing that to Lindos, we found that Old Town was a little bit more affordable and cheaper compared to the prices in in Lindos Old Town. Tip number 11, try to get off the beaten path when it comes to picking a beach. Now, for the most part, we went to all of your main beaches, but there was actually a time also in which we went off the beaten path and we found this incredible little cove slash nookie beach area that no one had mentioned anywhere from my research. I'll insert it right here. But instead of just going to kind of like your tourist hotspot beaches, try to go to a couple that are more off the beaten path. Even if you can find some on your Google Maps, like if you just begin driving and you see like a little road that leads to kind of nothing, but it leads to a cove or a beach, definitely try to go there because chances are you've just found a complete private beach and probably a pretty stunning beach as well. Tip number 12, Stegna Beach. Now, we really love this area, and I want to say for the most part, we found ourselves driving here a lot. I guess it wasn't really that far from Old Town, but we really love this area. The food was incredible. The restaurant selection was incredible. If you are looking for kind of like a special place to dine, I highly recommend that one with the shells. I'll insert it right here. But essentially, as soon as you get into like the Stegna area, you'll see this one restaurant and you definitely won't miss it because it's literally the first restaurant you'll see on the main road, but it's decked out with shells and it's an amazing lunch spot where you can kind of just chill, grab a drink, and kind of just enjoy the beach. Now, another thing that we really loved about this area was Maria's Tavern. Now, this is a restaurant I actually found on Google Maps and it wasn't anything that was mentioned on any articles or anything, but they are insanely highly rated and for good reason. Their food is so homey and authentic. Like if you were looking or had an itch for like Greek cuisine and you're like, I really want like tzatziki or like homemade meatballs, this is exactly where you go. Like I'm literally salivating as I talk about this, but their flavors, the ambiance, it just felt like super mom and pop shop. And not to mention their prices are really affordable. So we found ourselves going back there a lot, and in particular Maria's Tavern. Now, if you go, it can be a little bit tricky to find parking. So I recommend you just parking on that like main road, that strip of road, because as soon as you take that right into Maria's Tavern restaurant, parking is going to be pretty limited. And you also want to go here either with a reservation or earlier in the evening. If you go around 7:30 or 8, that's like a sweet spot time and you might not be able to get a seating. So if you do end up going to this restaurant, park on the main street and try to get a reservation. Tip number 13, the beaches are not all the same. So if you're looking for something a little bit calmer, something you can enjoy for an entire day, I would definitely try to stick to the east side in terms of like trying to find a spot or a day club or a beach club, because chances are the east side is going to be a lot more calm than your beaches on the west side. In terms of west side, I would recommend to do more of just kind of like a coastal drive-through, or if you're into surfing or any of that like type of stuff, that's going to be better for that because the winds are a lot heavier on the west side compared to the east side. One that we really loved was Anthony Quinn Bay. Now, if you do decide to go, besides snorkeling gear, definitely pack some really good water shoes because this beach is pretty much entirely all rocks. Tip number 14, the Lindos Acropolis. Now, if you can, definitely try to get to the Acropolis right when it opens because that will be the best time to go when it comes to like crowd control and also weather. If you go around 10 or 11, all the day crowds have come in, all the tours have come in, and it gets really hot and there's very little shade. So I recommend if you do decide to visit the Acropolis, definitely try to go as early as possible. Now, I do also have to note that when it comes to the Acropolis, there is a little bit of hiking uphill involved. Now, in terms of getting there, you do have to kind of go through the actual like Lindos town in order to get to the Acropolis. And the last little bit, there is a little bit of incline and it's not wheelchair accessible either. So if you are planning to do that, just be aware that that is a thing. Now, there are donkeys that are available if you need it, but I typically wouldn't recommend doing the donkeys because I just really can't get behind that. But if you do need a little bit more assistance, the donkeys do start right at the beginning where you park your car, and the donkeys will take you through the town of Lindos and then kind of up to the main entrance of the Acropolis. So that is an option and it's there if you need it. Now, the last tip are day trips. So if you do have that extra time, in which I highly recommend you kind of do budget for a little bit of extra time to kind of venture out to another island, I recommend 2 islands. One is Simi and the other is Halki. Now, Simi you've probably seen a little bit of, and it's this beautiful, glorious, it almost feels very similar to Hydra, but a lot less pretentious. Simi is super chill, super vibey, super duper authentic, and most of the times people only go for a day trip. So if you can and you really want to enjoy an authentic Greek island experience, try to stay in Simi for the night because the seafood is incredible and you're not going to find any frozen seafood here just because it would be more expensive to like literally freeze the seafood than just to serve it to you fresh. So everything we found on the island was super authentic. It was such great vibes, and for the most part you're going to be staying around that harbor area, and it is honestly just the best option when it comes to a day trip. Now, another option that you have is Halki. Now, I would recommend Halki if you truly have seen a lot of the other Greek islands and you know kind of how that feels, and you're really looking for something completely quiet, completely off the beaten path, and completely authentic. Now, if you're someone who's like super go, 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 I probably wouldn't recommend Halki just because it's very, very, very small and there's not quite a lot to do on the island. You pretty much get there, you walk around kind of like the harbor area, you can grab a bite of food, and you can pretty much park yourself at a beach club. And these beach clubs, or I wouldn't even call them beach clubs, they're pretty much just organized beaches that serves food. They were so incredibly affordable. I'm pretty sure we paid like 15 euros for like 2 beds and 1 umbrella for the entire day while we were in Halki. So if you are looking for something a little bit more calmer, like literally you don't want to do anything for the entire day, definitely try to check out Halki. And with that, those are the things that I thought would have been really helpful to know going into our trip to Rhodes. If you found that helpful, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.